Welcome to Chapter 8, where we tackle one of the most fundamental questions in business. How do companies create value? And more importantly, how do they capture that value as profit? This isn't just about making products, it's about building sustainable, competitive advantages that generate long-term returns. Think about why Apple can charge $1,200 for an iPhone when similar smartphones only cost $300. Or why Netflix transformed from a DVD by mail service to a global streaming giant worth hundreds of billions. The answer lies in understanding how to systematically create and capture value. Today, we're building a comprehensive toolkit for strategic thinking. We'll explore how managers can increase industry value through innovation, efficiency, and smart positioning. But creating value is only half the battle. We need to understand why competitive forces make it so difficult to actually capture that value as profit. We'll dive into the concept of economic rents, why some companies can sustain superior returns while others get competed away to normal profits. We'll also examine diversification strategies, strategic planning frameworks, and the harsh reality that most competitive advantages are temporary. By the end of this chapter, you'll think like a strategist, understanding both opportunities and the constraints that shape business success. Strategy is much more than a buzzword. It's a coherent set of policies designed to generate profits. Let's break this down into three components. Choice of industry matters enormously. Warren Buffett famously said he'd rather own a wonderful business in a terrible industry than a terrible business in a wonderful industry. But he'd much prefer a wonderful business in a wonderful industry. The software industry has fundamentally different profit potential than the airline industry. Combination of products and services defines your competitive position. Amazon started with books, but strategically expanded into, well, everything. Netflix moved from DVDs to streaming to original content. These were not random moves. They were strategic combinations that created synergies. Competitive and cooperative behaviors shape industry dynamics. Sometimes you compete head-to-head, and sometimes you cooperate. Apple and Samsung are fierce competitors in smartphones, but Samsung supplies critical components to Apple. Understanding when to compete and when to cooperate is a strategic art. Key insight is that strategies must both create and capture value. Creating value without capturing it makes customers and suppliers rich, but not you. Capturing value without creating it is unsustainable. Eventually, customers will find better alternatives. Value creation boils down to making the economic pie bigger, shifting supply and demand curves in favorable ways. Let's explore the main approaches. Reducing production costs shifts supply right, allowing lower prices and higher quantities. Walmart mastered this through the supply chain efficiency and economies of scale. When Walmart enters a market, prices drop because they can profitably operate at lower margins than competitors. Reducing transaction costs is often overlooked, but hugely valuable. Transaction costs include all of the friction in doing business: search costs, negotiation costs, legal expenses, and enforcement costs. Amazon revolutionized commerce by reducing consumer transaction costs. Before Amazon, buying a book meant driving to a bookstore, searching the shelves, waiting in line, and hoping they had what you wanted. Amazon eliminated most of these costs. You can find any book instantly, compare prices, read reviews, and have it delivered by tomorrow. The diagram here shows how reducing transaction costs creates value for everyone. The gap between potential supply and demand curves and actual curves represents pure waste, value that transaction costs destroy. Companies that eliminate these costs can capture some of that value while sharing the benefits with customers. Beyond reducing costs, firms can increase demand through several clever approaches. Improving product quality seems obvious, but requires understanding what quality means to the customer. Tesla didn't just make electric cars, they made electric cars that were faster, more technologically advanced, and had better software than traditional luxury cars. They redefined quality in automotive terms. Pricing complements strategically creates powerful business models. This is the razor and blade strategy. Gillette sells razors cheaply and makes profits on the replacement blades. Video game consoles often lose money, but the games are highly profitable. The key is controlling the profitable complement. Manipulating substitute availability can be controversial but effective. Movie theaters ban outside food, not because of security, it's because $15 popcorn becomes attractive when your only alternative is going hungry. Airlines create similar dynamics by restricting carry-on liquids, making $5 airport water bottles seem reasonable. The CompuInc and Print Company example here illustrates a crucial strategic insight. When products are complements, each company's pricing affects the other's demand. In the non-cooperative scenario, each company maximizes its own profits, ignoring the externality they impose on their partner. CompuInc sets high computer prices, which reduces demand for both computers and printers. PrintCo does the same with printer prices. Here's what that looks like on a graph. But notice what happens with coordination. Total profits increase from $32,000 to $36,000, and customers benefit from lower prices and higher quantities. This is a rare win-win-win situation. This explains why Apple controls both hardware and software, why Amazon makes its own devices for its services, and why Microsoft bundles Office applications. When you can control complements, you can optimize the total system rather than sub-optimizing individual components. The strategic lesson: look for opportunities to internalize complementary relationships through vertical integration, partnerships, or ecosystem strategies. Here's a framework that's particularly relevant for knowledge-intensive businesses. Think of organizational capability as three types of capital. Hardware, your physical assets from factories to computers to office buildings. This is often the most visible but least differentiating form of capital, since competitors can usually buy similar hardware. Software, your processes, formulas, and recipes for creating value. McDonald's doesn't just have kitchens, aka hardware, they have precisely defined processes for consistent food preparation worldwide. This software capital is harder to copy than the hardware. Wetware, employee knowledge, skills, and creativity. This is often the most valuable and the hardest to replicate. Google's search algorithm is software, but the engineers who continuously improve it are wetware. For professional services like firms like Arthur Andersen, wetware was the primary source of value creation. Their competitive advantage came from having the smartest accountants, the most experienced consultants, and the deepest industry expertise. The firm's strategy had to focus on attracting, developing, and retaining top talent while creating systems to leverage that human capital across the organization. This allowed employees to experiment and innovate. value creation increasingly comes from human creativity, not just operational efficiency. Creating value is necessary but not sufficient for profits. You also need market power to capture some of that value rather than competing it away to customers. The contrast between competitive markets and market power is stark. In perfect competition, firms are price takers. They can sell any quantity at the market price, but they cannot influence that price. All value creation flows to consumers through lower prices. With market power, firms face downward sloping demand curves. They can choose price quantity, combinations, and capture producer surplus. The diagram shows how firms with market power can extract some value that would otherwise go to consumers. Market power isn't just about being big, it's about having something competitors can't easily replicate or substitute. Starbucks has market power not because they're large, but because they built a brand and an experience that creates customer loyalty and reduces that price sensitivity. Market power comes from barriers that prevent competitors from stealing your customers or duplicating your advantages. Entry barriers protect you from new competitors. Economies of scale mean efficient operation requires large volume. This protects established players. Patents provide legal barriers. Strong brand names create psychological barriers. High exit costs, like specialized equipment, deter entry because potential entrants know leaving will be very expensive. Degree of rivalry matters even when entry barriers exist. An industry with few similar-sized competitors often sees intense price competition. But if one firm dominates, or if competitors focus on different segments, rivalry may be more restrained. Threat of substitutes comes from outside your industry. Movie theaters compete with streaming services. Taxi companies compete with Uber, which competes with the public transit, which competes with remote work. The broader you define substitutes, the less market power you have. Buyer and supplier power can squeeze your margins from both sides. Walmart's size gives them enormous buyer power. Suppliers often operate at lower margins because losing Walmart means losing a huge chunk of demand. Similarly, if you depend on a few key suppliers, they can capture value you create. Arthur Andersen's market power in the 1990s came from multiple sources. Reputation barriers, it took them decades to build trust. Regulatory barriers, auditing required certified expertise. Switching costs, changing auditors was complex and risky. And network effects, being one of the big five, meant access to global clients and top talent. Beyond market power, firms can create value through innovation and superior resources. New products and services can create entirely new markets or transform existing ones. The iPhone wasn't just a better phone, it created the smartphone ecosystem, spawning app stores, mobile advertising, and countless new business models. Netflix didn't just improve video rental, they created streaming and the then original content production. Cooperation with other firms can create value impossible to achieve alone. Strategic alliances, joint ventures, and ecosystems allow firms to combine complementary capabilities. Intel and Microsoft's Wintel partnership dominated personal computing for decades. Superior factors of production are the resources that give you sustainable advantages. These come in two main categories. People with special talents, think top athletes, brilliant engineers, creative designers, or experienced managers. Pixar's value comes largely from their creative talent. Investment banks compete fiercely for star analysts and deal makers. Physical assets in premium locations or with unique capabilities. Manhattan real estate or oil reserves or specialized manufacturing equipment can provide lasting advantages. The challenge? If these resources are clearly valuable, other firms will try to bid them away, potentially eroding your profits. Here's a crucial insight that many managers miss. Owning superior assets doesn't guarantee superior profits. If everyone recognizes that your star engineer is responsible for your success, competing firms will bid for that engineer's services. Their salary will rise until it captures most of the value they create. You get the benefit of their productivity, but pay a price that reflects that benefit. This is why free agent sports salaries are so high. Teams bid against each other for proven talent, and most of the value goes to the players rather than the team owners. This diagram shows this graphically. A firm with superior assets can produce at a lower cost. LRAC 1 versus LRAC 0. But if those assets are bid up to their full value, costs rise and profits disappear. Team production offers an escape from this trap. When value comes from unique combinations of people working together, it's much harder for competitors to replicate. They'd have to recruit the entire team and recreate the working relationships. This explains why successful consulting firms, law firms, and investment banks often succeed or fail as teams. Arthur Andersen's value didn't come from individual superstars, but from teams that combined audit expertise, industry knowledge, and client relationships in ways that were hard for competitors to duplicate. The lesson here is build capabilities that depend on organizational systems and team interactions, not just individual talent. Diversification means operating multiple businesses within one firm, and that can create or destroy value depending on how it's been implemented. There's several benefits of diversification. One, economies of scope can occur when producing multiple products together costs less than producing them separately. For example, Disney leverages characters across movies, theme parks, merchandise, and streaming services. The same creative assets generate revenue in multiple channels. Another benefit is promoting complements, and that works when your different businesses support each other. Amazon's cloud services, AWS, support their e-commerce platform, while e-commerce data improves their advertising business, which benefits AWS customers. Each business makes the others more valuable. Now, there are costs of diversification as well. Bureaucracy increases with complexity. Managing multiple businesses requires more coordination, more meetings, more reporting, and more overhead. Pure play competitors may be more nimble and focused. Incompatible cultures create friction when different businesses need different approaches. The culture that makes a great consulting firm might not work great for an audit firm, even though both involve professional services. Diversification for its own sake rarely creates value. Investors can diversify their portfolios more efficiently than firms can diversify their operations. Only diversify when you can create value through genuine synergies that outside markets cannot provide. Arthur Andersen's diversification into consulting made sense because audit and consulting services shared human capital, analytical skills, client relationships. The CFOs needed both services, and reputation assets, trust, and expertise. But as we learn from history, managing the potential conflicts between these businesses proved challenging for them. Effective strategy requires systematic analysis of both internal capabilities and external environment. Internal resources and capabilities include your physical capital, facilities and equipment, human capital, such as skills and knowledge experience, and organizational capital, such as culture, processes, and systems. The key question is, what can you do better than your competitors? External environment includes markets, customers, competitors, suppliers, technology, such as production methods, information systems, and communication, and government regulations, such as laws, taxes, and subsidies. So, as strategists and managers, we need to ask ourselves, what opportunities and threats exist? Strategy emerges from combining these analyses. The best strategies leverage internal strengths to exploit external opportunities while addressing weaknesses and threats. The framework shows strategy as the intersection of internal capabilities and external environment. You can't succeed by ignoring either dimension. Great internal capabilities are worthless if there's no market demand. Great market opportunities are useless if you lack the capabilities to exploit them. This framework helps explain why some companies succeed where other companies fail, even in the same industry. Southwest Airlines succeeded with low-cost strategy because they had both the internal capabilities, for example, efficient operations and strong culture, and the right external environment, such as price-sensitive customers and deregulated markets. Let's end with a sobering but important reality check. Sustainable value capture is extremely difficult. Markets bid up required resources. If your success depends on scarce resources, other firms will compete for those resources, driving up their prices. Star employees demand higher salaries. Premium locations become more expensive. Superior equipment gets bid away. Environments change. Technology evolves, customer preferences shift, regulations change, and new competitors emerge. What gave you an advantage yesterday may be irrelevant tomorrow. Kodak's expertise in the film industry became worthless with digital photography. Blockbuster's retail network became a liability with streaming video. Normal rates of return are the long-run equilibrium. Economic theory predicts that above normal profits attract competition, which eventually drives returns back to normal levels. This isn't pessimism, it's recognition that competitive markets work. The implication? Strategy must be dynamic. Sustainable advantage comes not from finding one great position, but from continuously adapting and innovating. Companies that succeed long-term are those that keep creating new sources of value faster than competition can imitate the old ones. Amazon exemplifies this dynamic approach. They continuously evolve from books to general e-commerce, to cloud computing, to AI services, always moving into new areas before competition fully commoditized their existing business. Key takeaways for strategic thinking. Value creation and capture are different challenges. Many firms excel at one but fail at the other. Focus on both systematically. Market power requires barriers. Without some form of protection from competition, value creation flows to customers rather than shareholders. Superior assets aren't enough. If competitors can identify and bid for your key resources, profits disappear. Focus on team production and organizational capabilities. Diversification needs synergies. Don't diversify just to spread risk. Create genuine value through economies of scope or complementary relationships. Strategy must be dynamic. Static advantages are temporary. Build capabilities for continuous adaptation and innovation. Think systematically. Use frameworks to analyze both internal capabilities and external environment. Strategy succeeds at the intersection of what you can do and what the market rewards. The companies that create lasting value are those that understand these principles and execute them consistently over time. Strategy isn't about finding a magic formula. It's about building an organization that can continuously create and capture value in a changing world.